The night sky of the Draken homeworld burned orange and red. 2 moons hung low over the mountains, and the wind carried the smell of smoke and iron. It was a world of fire and stone, where the great dragon warriors had lived for 1,000 generations. On this night, something strange fell from the stars. Quan was the first to see it. He was a young warrior, barely past his 100th year, standing guard at the edge of the northern cliffs. His scales were dark green, and his eyes glowed like hot coals in the darkness. He watched the sky as he always did, looking for enemy ships or signs of danger. Then he saw the light, a small ball of fire falling fast toward the ground. It was not a meteor. It was too slow, too controlled. Quan spread his wings and flew toward it. The object crashed in a valley 3 miles from the cliff. When Quan arrived, he found a small metal pod, half buried in the dirt. Smoke rose from its surface. Strange symbols were written on its side, symbols he did not recognize. Quan called for others. Soon 5 more Draken warriors landed around the crash site. They were all large, standing over 8 feet tall, with powerful wings and long tails. Their scales ranged from black to red to gold. Each one carried weapons made of fire-forged steel. "What is this thing?" asked Seok, the oldest among them. His scales were gray with age, but his strength was still great. "I do not know," Quan said, "but something is inside." They could hear it, a soft sound, like crying. It was weak and strange, unlike any creature they knew. Seok stepped forward and tore open the side of the pod with his claws. Metal screamed as it bent and broke. Inside, they found something that shocked them all. It was a child, a human child. She was small, so very small. Her skin was soft and pale, without scales or armor. Her hair was black and dirty, covering half her face. Her clothes were torn and burned. She looked up at the massive dragon warriors with wide, terrified eyes. For a moment, no one moved. The Drakens had heard of humans before. They were a young species from a distant part of the galaxy, weak, soft, and short-lived. They had no claws, no wings, no fire breath. Most Drakens thought of them as little more than insects. "A human," Seok said, his voice filled with disgust. "Kill it, and be done." But Quan hesitated. He looked at the child and saw something in her eyes. She was afraid, yes, but there was something else too. Something strong. The little girl did not run. She did not scream. She simply sat there looking at the monsters around her and waited. "She is just a child," Quan said. "She is human," another warrior, Do-hyun, replied. "They are enemies of order. Their kind spreads across the stars like a disease. Better to end this one now." The little girl finally spoke. Her voice was small and broken, but she spoke in the common galactic tongue. "Please," she said, "please do not hurt me." Seok laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook the ground. "It speaks. How amusing." "Where did you come from, little creature?" Quan asked, kneeling down to look at her more closely. The girl's eyes filled with tears. "My ship. The big ship. Bad people came. They hurt everyone. My mother put me in this box and sent me away. She said to find help." She paused, her small body shaking. "Is my mother coming?" Quan felt something twist inside his chest. He did not know what it was. Drakens were not supposed to feel pity for weak creatures. They were warriors, born to fight and conquer. But this child, this tiny thing, made him feel something strange. "Your mother is not coming," Seok said coldly. "Your ship is destroyed. Your people are dead. You are alone." The girl's face crumpled. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not make a sound. She cried in silence, her small hands clutching the burned fabric of her clothes. "We should take her to Chief Taiho," Quan said suddenly. The other warriors stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Take a human to our chief?" Do-hyun said. "Are you mad? He will have your head for wasting his time." "Perhaps," Quan said. But this is not a normal situation. A human child, alone, crash-landed on our world. This could mean something. Raiders attacked her ship. The same raiders who have been attacking our trade routes. The chief should know. Seok considered this for a long moment. His old eyes studied the crying child, then looked back at Quan. Very well, he said at last. We will take her to Chief Taiho, but if he orders her death, you will be the one to carry it out. Understood? Quan nodded. Understood. He reached down and carefully picked up the little girl. She was so light, like holding a bird. She flinched at his touch, but did not fight. She was too tired, too broken to resist. What is your name, little one? Quan asked as he spread his wings. Yuna, the girl whispered. My name is Yuna. Yuna, Quan repeated. Hold on tight, Yuna. We are going to fly. The warriors took to the sky, their great wings beating against the night air. Yuna clung to Quan's chest, her small fingers gripping his scales. She looked down at the burning landscape below, at the rivers of lava and the mountains of black rock. She was on a world of dragons, and she was going to meet their king. The flight took an hour. They crossed over valleys and mountains, over cities carved into cliff faces and fortresses built on volcanic peaks. The Draken civilization was ancient and proud. They had been warriors since before humans learned to make fire. Finally, they arrived at the Great Hall of Chief Taiho. It was built into the largest mountain on the planet, a massive structure of stone and metal that reached up toward the stars. Fire burned in 100 windows, and the sound of drums echoed from within. Quan landed at the entrance, still holding Yuna in his arms. The guards at the gate looked at him with confusion. What is that thing? One of them asked. A human child, Quan said. I need to see the chief. The guard laughed. The chief does not meet with insects. This insect may have information about the raiders, Quan replied firmly. Let me pass, or explain to the chief why you turned away important news. The guard's smile faded. He stepped aside. Quan walked into the great hall, carrying the last survivor of a destroyed ship. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if the chief would listen or if he would simply order the child killed. But something told him that this small human girl was important. Something told him that this night would change everything. And as Yuna looked up at the massive hall around her, filled with dragon warriors and burning torches, she felt the same thing. She was scared. She was alone. But deep inside her heart, a tiny flame of hope still burned. She had found the dragons. Now she just had to make them listen. The Great Hall of Chief Taiho was the largest room Yuna had ever seen. It was bigger than her whole colony ship. The ceiling was so high that she could not see the top, lost somewhere in smoke and shadow. Massive pillars of black stone held up the roof, each one carved with images of dragons in battle. Hundreds of Draken warriors filled the hall. They sat on stone benches along the walls, eating meat and drinking from metal cups. Their voices were loud and deep, like thunder rolling across the sky. Firelight danced on their scales, making them shine like jewels. When Quan walked in carrying Yuna, the noise stopped. Every dragon turned to look. Hundreds of glowing eyes fixed on the tiny human child in the warrior's arms. The silence was heavy and cold. "What is this?" a voice boomed from the far end of the hall. Yuna looked toward the voice and saw him. Chief Taiho sat on a throne of black iron, raised above everyone else on a platform of stone steps. He was the largest Drakon she had seen, standing nearly 10 feet tall even while sitting. His scales were deep gold, like the sun at sunset, and his eyes burned with ancient fire. Great horns rose from his head, and his wings were folded behind him like a dark cape. He looked like a god of fire and war. Quan walked forward, carrying Yuna through the crowd of warriors. They parted for him, but their eyes never left the human child. Some looked curious. Most looked disgusted. "Chief Taiho," Quan said, kneeling before the throne. He set Yuna gently on the ground beside him. "I found this creature in an escape pod that crashed in the northern valley. She is a human child. Her ship was attacked by raiders." Chief Taiho leaned forward on his throne. His eyes studied Yuna like she was a strange insect he had never seen before. "A human," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You brought a human into my hall." "Yes, my chief," Quan said, keeping his head bowed. "I believed you should see her. The raiders who attacked her ship may be the same ones who have been troubling our trade routes." Taiho did not respond. He continued to stare at Yuna. The little girl stood trembling on the stone floor. She was so small compared to everything around her. The dragons towered over her like mountains. The hall could have held 1,000 of her. She felt like a drop of water in an ocean of fire. But she did not run. She did not hide. Her mother had told her to find help. Her mother had said she was brave, and even though her mother was gone now, Yuna wanted to make her proud. She looked up at Chief Taiho and met his burning eyes. The chief raised one eyebrow. "This creature has courage," he said. "It looks at me without looking away. Most warriors cannot do that." A few dragons laughed. Others whispered to each other. One large warrior with red scales stood up from his bench. His name was Junho, and he was known for his cruelty in battle. "My chief," Junho said, "why do we waste time with this? Humans are nothing. They are weak, soft things that die easily. Kill the child and send its body back to the stars as a warning to others." Several dragons growled in agreement. Yuna felt fear rising in her chest. Her legs wanted to run. Her body wanted to hide. But she forced herself to stay still. "Please," she said. Her voice was small, but in the silent hall, everyone heard it. "Please, may I speak?" The hall erupted in noise. Dragons shouted and laughed. A human child asking to speak before the chief? It was unheard of. It was insulting. But Taiho raised one hand and the noise stopped instantly. "Let her speak," he said. Yuna took a deep breath. She thought about her mother. She thought about her friends on the ship. She thought about everyone who was counting on her, even though they did not know it. "My name is Yuna," she said. "I am 7 years old. I come from the human colony ship Sunrise. 3 days ago, bad people attacked us. They had big ships with black flags. They killed many people. They took others away. My mother put me in an escape pod and sent me here." She paused, fighting back tears. The dragons watched her in silence. "But I was not the only one," Yuna continued. "Before the pod door closed, my mother told me something. She said that some people escaped. They hid in the cargo ships and flew away. They are still out there somewhere in space, waiting for help." Taiho's eyes narrowed. "And why do you tell us this?" Yuna looked directly at the great dragon chief. Her small hands formed into fists at her sides. "Because I want you to save them," she said. The hall exploded. Dragons roared with laughter and anger. Some pounded their fists on the stone benches. Others shouted insults at the tiny human. "Save them?" Junho yelled. "You want the Draken to save humans? We are warriors, not nursemaids. We do not help the weak." "The child is mad," another dragon shouted. "Kill her and be done with this foolishness." But Yuna did not back down. She stood her ground even as the noise crashed around her like waves against a rock. "I am not asking you to save me," she shouted. Her small voice cut through the chaos. "I am not begging for my own life. I know I am small. I know I am weak. If you want to kill me, you can. But please, please save my people." The hall fell silent again. Even Junho had no words. Taiho leaned back in his throne. His expression was unreadable. For a long moment, he simply looked at the tiny human girl standing before him. You do not beg for yourself, he said slowly. You beg for others. Yes, Yuna said. Her tears were flowing now, but her voice stayed strong. My mother, my friends, the other children. They are scared and alone. They have no one to help them. The bad people will find them. They will hurt them. Please. You are strong. You are powerful. You can save them. I will do anything. I will be your servant forever. Just please, please help them. She fell to her knees on the cold stone floor. Her small body shook with sobs. Please, she whispered. Please. The great hall of the Dracan was completely silent. Every warrior, every elder, every servant had stopped moving. They all stared at the tiny human child on her knees, crying not for herself, but for her people. Quan watched from where he knelt, his heart twisted in his chest. Junho stood with his mouth open, his cruel words forgotten. And on his throne of black iron, Chief Taiho sat very still. His ancient eyes looked at Yuna, and for the first time in many years, something in those eyes changed. He was remembering a time long ago when another small child had stood before him, asking for help. A child with golden scales and bright eyes. His daughter, lost to war, gone forever. Taiho closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his face was hard as stone. Leave us, he commanded. Everyone, leave now. The dragons obeyed instantly. They filed out of the great hall in silence, not daring to question their chief. Within minutes, the massive room was empty. Only 3 remained. Chief Taiho on his throne, Quan kneeling on the floor, and little Yuna still crying in the center of the hall. Taiho stood up from his throne. Slowly, heavily, he walked down the stone steps toward the human child. Yuna looked up at him through her tears. The great dragon chief towered over her, blocking out the firelight. His shadow covered her completely. She waited for death. But death did not come. Chief Taiho stood over the small human child, looking down at her with eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. He had killed enemies beyond counting. He had conquered worlds and burned cities. He had ruled the Draken for 300 years, and in all that time nothing had ever made him hesitate. Until now. This tiny creature, this fragile human girl, had done something no warrior ever could. She had reached inside his chest and touched something he thought was dead. Stand up, he said quietly. Yuna wiped her tears and slowly got to her feet. She was shaking. But she looked up at him without fear. Taiho knelt down. It was a movement that would have shocked anyone who saw it. The great chief of the Draken, kneeling before a human child. His face came close to hers, and she could see the ancient fire burning in his eyes. You are very small, he said. I know, Yuna whispered. You are very weak. I know. And yet you came here, to a world of dragons, and asked me to save your people. Taiho tilted his head, studying her. Why? Why do you think I would help you? Yuna thought for a moment. She did not have a clever answer. She did not have a plan. She only had the truth. Because my mother said that good people help each other, she said. She said that being strong does not mean hurting the weak. It means protecting them. Taiho's eyes flickered. Something passed across his face, quick as lightning. Then it was gone. He stood up and turned away from her. He walked toward a large window that looked out over the mountain landscape. Rivers of lava flowed in the distance, and the 2 moons hung low in the dark sky. I had a daughter once, Taiho said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. It did not sound like the voice of a warrior king. Yuna did not know what to say. She stayed quiet and listened. Her name was Nari, Taiho continued. She was young and full of life. Her scales were gold like mine. Her laugh was like music. She was the joy of my heart. He paused. The fire in the room crackled and popped. 20 years ago, raiders attacked one of our outer colonies. The same raiders who attack ships now. They called themselves the Black Flame. They were cruel and ruthless, killing anyone who stood against them. Taiho's hands closed into fists at his sides. Nari was visiting that colony. She wanted to see how our people lived in the outer worlds. She was curious, always wanting to learn. I told her it was dangerous. I told her to stay home. But she was stubborn, like her father. His voice grew heavy with old pain. The raiders came without warning. They killed everyone, men, women, children. They did not care. When my warriors finally arrived, it was too late. We found Nari in the ruins of the governor's house. She had died protecting the young ones. She had gathered the children of the colony and hidden them in a cellar. She stood at the door with a sword, fighting until her last breath. Yuna felt tears rolling down her cheeks again. Not tears of fear this time. Tears of sadness for this great dragon who had lost his child. She saved 12 children that day. Taiho said, 12 lives. Because one young dragon refused to run away. Because she believed that the strong should protect the weak. He turned back to face Yuna. His eyes were wet with something that looked like tears, though Yuna did not know that dragons could cry. When you spoke those words, human child, you sounded like her. You sounded like my Nari. Quan, who had been kneeling silently the whole time, raised his head. He had never heard this story before. No one had. The chief had never spoken of his daughter's death. Not in 20 years. Taiho walked back toward Yuna. Each step echoed in the empty hall. He stopped in front of her and knelt down again, bringing his face close to hers. I have been angry for a long time, he said. I have hated the universe for taking my daughter. I have closed my heart to everything soft, everything gentle. I told myself that caring was weakness, that love only brought pain. He reached out one massive hand. Yuna flinched, expecting to be grabbed or hurt. Instead, Taiho gently placed his hand on top of her head. His touch was surprisingly warm and soft. But you, little one, have reminded me of something I forgot, something important. What? Yuna asked in a tiny voice. That courage has no size, Taiho said. That bravery does not need scales or wings or fire. You are the smallest, weakest creature I have ever seen. And yet you are braver than most of my warriors. He removed his hand and stood up. Tell me more about your people, he said. Tell me about the survivors you want me to save. Yuna's heart jumped. Was he really going to help? She forced herself to stay calm and speak clearly. There were about 300 people on our ship, she said. My mother told me that maybe 50 escaped in the cargo ships. They were going to hide in the asteroid field near our colony. They have food and water for maybe 2 weeks, but after that, they will have to leave hiding. And when they do, the bad people will find them. The Black Flame, Taiho said, his voice growing hard. They never stop hunting. They will kill your people or sell them as slaves. Yes, Yuna said. That is why I need your help. Please, Chief Taiho, I know you have no reason to help humans. I know we are weak and small. But my mother, my friends, they are good people. They never hurt anyone. They just wanted to find a new home. Taiho was silent for a long moment. He walked to his throne and sat down heavily. The black iron creaked under his weight. Quan watched him, barely breathing. The young warrior had never seen his chief like this. Taiho seemed older somehow, tired in a way that had nothing to do with his body. Quan, Taiho finally said. Yes, my chief? What do you think I should do? Quan was shocked. The chief was asking for his opinion? This had never happened before. Taiho always made his own decisions without asking anyone. Quan hesitated. I think the child speaks truth, my chief. I looked into her eyes when I found her. There was no deception, only fear and hope. And do you think we should help her people? Quan thought carefully before answering. We have no bond with humans. We have no reason to risk Draken lives for them, but... He paused. The Black Flame is our enemy too. They killed Lady Nari. They attack our ships. If we rescue these humans, we gain allies. We gain information, and we hurt the ones who hurt us. Taiho nodded slowly. A practical answer. Good. He turned his eyes back to Yuna. And what about you, small one? What will you give me in return for saving your people? Yuna thought hard. She had nothing. She was just a child. What could she possibly offer to a dragon king? I will give you everything I have, she said finally. My service, my loyalty, my life if you want it. I do not have much, but whatever I have is yours. Taiho stared at her for a long time. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on the Dragon Chief's face. It was the first time he had smiled in 20 years. Keep your life, little human, he said. You will need it. You have much growing to do. He stood up from his throne, and when he spoke again, his voice was the voice of a king, strong, certain, and full of power. I have made my decision. The great drums of the mountain hall began to beat. The sound echoed across the entire Draken capital, calling all warriors back to the hall of the chief. It was a sound that had not been heard in many years. It meant that something important was about to happen. Within an hour, the hall was full again. Hundreds of Draken warriors crowded onto the stone benches. More stood along the walls and filled the doorways. Everyone wanted to know what their chief had decided about the strange human child. Yuna stood at the base of the throne platform, with Quan standing protectively beside her. She felt very small, surrounded by so many dragons. Their eyes watched her, some curious, some hostile. The air was thick with tension. Chief Taiho sat on his throne, looking out over his people. His face showed nothing. His eyes burned steady and calm. My warriors, he began, his voice filling the massive hall. Tonight, something unusual happened. A human child crashed on our world. She came alone, afraid, with nothing but the clothes on her back, and she asked me for help. Whispers ran through the crowd. Some dragons laughed quietly. I know what many of you think, Taiho continued. Humans are weak. They are small. They are not worth our attention. Why should the mighty Draken care about such creatures? Junho, the red-scaled warrior, stood up from his seat. That is exactly right, my chief. Humans are nothing to us. Let the Black Flame have them. What difference does it make? Several dragons shouted in agreement. Taiho raised his hand, and silence fell instantly. I will tell you what difference it makes, he said. His voice grew harder, colder. The Black Flame killed my daughter. The silence became absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. 20 years ago, they attacked the outer colony where Nari was visiting. They killed everyone, including my only child. Since that day, I have sworn revenge. But the Black Flame is clever. They hide in the dark spaces between stars. They attack and disappear before we can find them. He stood up from his throne. This human child has given us something valuable. Information. She knows where her people are hiding. The Black Flame will come for them. When they do, we will be waiting. A rumble of interest went through the crowd. Warriors looked at each other with new understanding. But that is not the only reason for my decision, Taiho continued. He walked down the steps until he stood beside Yuna. This child did something that impressed me, something I have not seen in a very long time. He looked down at Yuna, and his eyes softened just a little. She did not beg for her own life. She begged for the lives of her people. She stood before me, a creature she knew could kill her with one hand. And she asked me to save others. She offered her own life in exchange. Taiho turned back to his warriors. Tell me, my dragons, How many of you would do the same? How many of you would stand before a god and ask for mercy for others while expecting none for yourself? No one answered. The warriors shifted uncomfortably on their benches. My daughter Nari did that, Taiho said. She died protecting children who were not her own. She gave her life for the weak because she believed that was what the strong should do. He placed his massive hand on Yuna's shoulder. Tonight, this human child reminded me of my daughter. She reminded me of what it means to be truly brave. And she reminded me that courage is not about how big you are or how many enemies you can kill. It is about standing up for what is right, even when you are afraid. Taiho's voice rose to fill the entire hall. Therefore, I have made my decision. From this moment, the human child Yuna is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her will answer to me. The hall erupted in shocked voices. Dragons shouted questions and protests. This was unheard of. A human? Protected by the chief himself? Taiho waited for the noise to die down, then continued. Furthermore, I am ordering the Third Fleet to launch immediately. They will fly to the human hiding place and rescue all survivors. They will bring them here, to our world, where they will be safe. Now the shouting grew even louder. Junho pushed through the crowd toward the front. My chief, this is madness, he yelled. We cannot bring humans to our world. They will pollute our civilization. They are weak, diseased creatures who will corrupt our young. Silence! Taiho's voice thundered through the hall like an explosion. The walls shook. Dragons stumbled backward from the force of it. Junho fell to his knees, trembling. I am your chief, Taiho said, his voice deadly quiet now. I have led you for 300 years. I have won more battles than you have seen days. My decisions are not questions to be debated. They are commands to be obeyed. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of every warrior. Does anyone else wish to challenge my decree? No one spoke. No one moved. Good. Taiho walked back up the steps to his throne. The Third Fleet will launch within the hour. Commander Siok, you will lead the mission. Find the human survivors and bring them here safely. If you encounter the Black Flame, destroy them. No mercy, no prisoners. Siok stood and bowed deeply. It will be done, my chief. One more thing, Taiho said. He looked at Yuna, who was staring up at him with tears in her eyes. This child will stay in the palace. She will be given food, clothing, and a room of her own. She will be treated with respect. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. I have lost one daughter. I will not lose another. The hall fell completely silent. Every dragon understood what those words meant. The chief was not just protecting the human child. He was adopting her. He was making her his own. Yuna could not believe what she was hearing. Tears streamed down her face. She wanted to thank him, but her voice would not work. All she could do was bow her head and cry. Quan knelt beside her. He felt something strange in his chest, something warm and bright. Pride, he realized. He was proud of his chief for making this decision. Proud of this tiny human for having the courage to ask. The meeting is over, Taiho announced. Go to your duties. We have much work to do. The dragons filed out of the hall, still whispering to each other in amazement. Many of them looked at Yuna with new eyes as they passed. She was no longer just a weak human child. She was the chief's protected one. She was, in a way, one of them now. When the hall was empty, Taiho came down from his throne and knelt before Yuna once more. You have done something impossible tonight, little one, he said gently. You have changed the heart of an old dragon. Thank you, Yuna whispered through her tears. Thank you for saving my people. Taiho smiled. It was a rare sight, that smile. Warm and real and full of something that had been missing for 20 years. Thank you, he said, for reminding me who I used to be. Outside, The great ships of the Third Fleet began to power up their engines. Lights flickered on across the mountain fortress. Dragons shouted orders and loaded weapons. The rescue mission was about to begin. And somewhere in the cold darkness of space, 50 frightened humans waited in hiding, not knowing that help was coming, not knowing that a little girl named Yuna had done the impossible. She had made dragons care. 6 months had passed since the night Yuna crashed on the Draken world. 6 months since she had stood before Chief Taiho and begged for the lives of her people. 6 months since everything changed. The rescue mission had been a success. Commander Seok and the Third Fleet found the human survivors hiding in the asteroid field, just as Yuna had said. There were 47 of them, scared and hungry, running out of food and hope. When the massive Draken warships appeared, the humans thought they were going to die. They thought the dragons had come to finish what the raiders started. Instead, the dragons brought food, water, and medicine. They brought warmth and safety. They brought the survivors home. Among the rescued was a woman named Hana. She was 34 years old, with tired eyes and hands that shook when she spoke. When she saw Yuna standing at the landing platform, waiting with the other Draken, she fell to her knees and wept. "My daughter," she cried, reaching out with trembling arms. "My baby girl, you are alive." Yuna ran to her mother and threw herself into her arms. For a long time, they just held each other and cried. All around them, humans and dragons watched in silence. Yuna's mother had survived. Against all odds, she had made it onto one of the cargo ships. She had spent months not knowing if her daughter was alive or dead, praying every day for a miracle. And a miracle had come, in the form of a 7-year-old girl who was brave enough to ask dragons for help. Now, 6 months later, the human settlement on the Draken world was growing. The survivors had been given land in a valley near the capital city. They built homes and farms, schools and hospitals. It was not easy living among dragons, but they were learning. Both species were learning. Yuna stood on a balcony of the royal palace, looking out at the sunset. The sky was orange and red, painted with fire. In the distance, she could see the human village, its lights starting to flicker on as night approached. "You are thinking again?" said a deep voice behind her. Yuna turned and smiled. Chief Taiho walked out onto the balcony, his golden scales shining in the fading light. Even after 6 months, she still felt a little scared when she saw him. He was so big, so powerful. But she also felt safe, safer than she had ever felt in her life. "I was thinking about how strange everything is," she said. 6 months ago, I was just a normal girl on a ship. Now I live in a dragon palace." Taiho laughed. It was a sound that still surprised people when they heard it. The old chief rarely laughed before Yuna came. Now, he laughed often. "Life is full of surprises," he said. "That is what makes it interesting." He came to stand beside her at the balcony edge. Together, they watched the sunset. "The council meeting went well today," Taiho said. "The elders have agreed to a formal alliance between our peoples. Trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchange, everything we discussed." Yuna nodded. She had been part of those discussions, even though she was only 7 years old. Chief Taiho said her perspective was important. She was the bridge between the two species, the one who had brought them together. "My mother is happy," Yuna said. "She says she never thought she would see humans and dragons working together." "Neither did I," Taiho admitted. "If someone had told me a year ago that I would adopt a human daughter and welcome her people to my world, I would have called them mad." He looked down at Yuna with warmth in his ancient eyes. "But then I met you, and you showed me that the universe is bigger than my anger. That there is still good worth fighting for." Yuna reached up and took his massive hand. Her small fingers could barely wrap around one of his claws, but she held on tight. "I did not do anything special," she said. I just asked for help. No, Taiho said. You did much more than that. You showed courage when you had every reason to be afraid. You thought of others when you could have thought only of yourself. You reminded an old dragon what it means to have a heart. He squeezed her hand gently. Those things are not small, little one. Those things are everything. From behind them, footsteps approached. Quan walked out onto the balcony, his green scales dark in the evening light. He had become something like an older brother to Yuna, always watching over her, teaching her about Draken culture and history. Forgive me? My chief, Quan said, bowing his head. But there is news. Speak, Taiho said. Our scouts have found the main base of the Black Flame. It is hidden in the Void sector beyond the outer territories. We can attack within the month. Taiho's expression hardened. The warmth faded from his eyes, replaced by cold fire. Good, he said. Assemble the War Council. We plan our attack tomorrow. Yes, my chief. Quan bowed again and left. Yuna looked up at Taiho. You are going to fight the bad people? The ones who attacked my ship? Yes, Taiho said. They have hurt too many. Humans, Drakens, others. They killed my daughter. They almost killed you. It is time for them to pay. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I come to the War Council? Taiho raised an eyebrow. You want to help plan a battle? I want to help stop them, Yuna said, so they cannot hurt anyone else. So no other little girl has to lose her mother. So no other father has to lose his daughter. Taiho stared at her for a long time. Then slowly, he nodded. You truly are remarkable, little one. Yes, you may come. Your voice matters. The next month was filled with preparation. Warships were loaded, warriors trained, plans were made and changed and made again. And through it all, Yuna was there. She did not fight, of course. She was too young, too small. But she listened and learned. She asked questions that made even the oldest generals think. When the day of battle came, Yuna stood with her mother on the palace balcony, watching the great fleet rise into the sky. Hundreds of Draken warships, the largest force ever assembled by the clan, heading to destroy the enemy once and for all. Are you scared? Her mother asked. A little, Yuna admitted. But I believe in them. Chief Taiho will win. I know he will. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Black Flame was destroyed. Their ships were burned. Their bases were gone. Their leaders were captured and brought back to face justice for their crimes. Chief Taiho returned home a hero. But when he landed his ship and walked down the ramp, he did not go to his generals or his advisors. He went straight to a small human girl standing at the edge of the landing field. He knelt before her, as he had done on that first night, 6 months ago. It is done, he said. They will never hurt anyone again. Yuna threw her arms around his neck and hugged him tight. Thank you, father, she whispered. Taiho closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his scaled cheek. Thank you, daughter, he replied, for giving me something worth fighting for. And so the story spread across the galaxy. The story of a little human girl who crashed on a world of dragons, a girl who was brave enough to ask for help, a girl who reminded a broken king how to love again, a girl who changed 2 civilizations forever. They called her the Dragon's Daughter, and her legend had only just begun.